Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss in detail about another crisis which is unfolding in South Korea. Now, this is related to the same phase of crisis the country witnessed in the beginning of the month of December when the South Korean president has declared a martial law in the country. Now, obviously, the decision of martial law that was taken by the president was overturned in the majority vote of the parliament, and now the same parliament has decided to impeach the president of the South Korea. Basically, he will have to leave his office. So let us try to understand in more detail about how this entire situation has unfolded in the South Korea. So first of all, if you take a look here, in the Saturday, the South Korean parliament has voted to impeach the president. The president is Yoon Suk Yeol over his short-lived martial law declaration as we discussed earlier this month. Now, the motion was passed in the National Assembly, and we can see the unanimous, not unanimous, but we can say the majority of the members, they believe that what Yeol did in the beginning of the month, declaration of martial law, was something that was unconstitutional or abuse of power. And that is why you can see the motion was passed with a majority vote of 204 voting for the impeachment and 85 voting against. Now, this is something also interesting because if you take a look at the distribution of seats that you have in the National Assembly of South Korea, the blue dots represents the Democratic Party. This is the party that is in opposition of the current president's party, and the red dot that you represent, which is the People Power Party, is from where the current president belongs to. So even if you take a look at the distribution of number, it seems that even some of his, first of all, the entire opposition was almost united, and then even some of his own party member might have voted against him, and that is, we can say, for the impeachment to take place. Now, Yoon's presidential powers and duties, just after the impeachment has been passed, the motion has been passed. Now, immediately what will happen is that his duties and powers will be suspended, and after the copies of document on the impeachment are delivered to him and to the Constitutional Court. Now, the Constitutional Court here has to play a very important role, and we can say the ultimate defining role about the future of the current president. Now, before going into that what lies ahead for the president, let us try to understand briefly about the martial law, because if you try to understand, it was the declaration of this law that has led to a current situation of impeachment. Now, in simple terms, martial law can be defined as the replacement of the civilian administration or civilian government by the military rule or military government. Military obviously will be controlled directly and directed by the president of South Korea. So the standard civil liberties which the people generally enjoys, the freedom of press, we can say, the freedom of gathering, the freedom of voicing one's own opinion, those liberty would have been suspended in South Korea had martial law been continued. Now, if you look at the power of declaring martial law, it was not something which was out of constitution or which was extraordinary. Before also, martial law has been declared many times in South Korea. However, after 1980s, there has not been any such instances. This is the first instance, or this was the first instance. Now, this power of declaring martial law comes from the Article 77 of the Republic of Korea's constitution. However, there is a certain fixed regions that can result into the declaration of martial law. These are to cope with a military necessity that largely talks about the war-like situation or external threat-like situation that might develop in the country, which requires the military mobilization and total control over the law and order situation. The second is to maintain the public safety and order. If internal rebellion, internal disturbances of large scale start to take place in the country where the military force mobilization is required, then also the martial law can be imposed. However, many of the opposition party leaders and experts argue that in this present time, there was no such condition prevalent in South Korea. Everything was functioning good. Only problem that the president had is that the opposition party members, as we can see from the past this distribution, that they are the one that is holding most of the seats, as we have discussed before. If you look at the majority of the parliament members are from opposition parties, and they were not allowing the president to get his bills, his motions, his policies passed in the parliament, and that is the reason behind the imposition of martial law. Now, what will happen next? We already have discussed that the motion has been passed by the National Assembly where he has been impeached. Now, the matter will be referred, or the copy of the motion will be referred to the Constitutional Court of the country. And this Constitutional Court will then hear into the matters, and it will have almost 6 months, that means we can say 180 days, to determine whether the president should be dismissed or should his power be restored. Keep in mind that his power has been taken away as of now. Restoration of power can be done next by the decision of the constitutional court of the country. If suppose there are two possibilities, if the constitutional court find out that the motion that has been passed has legitimacy, then he can be thrown out of the office, he can be removed from the president's office. And since now South Korea will have no longer any president, the country's constitution and law requires that within the 60 days, when the president leave his office, the country will choose its successor through the method of election. So election will be held, a national election will have to be held to again select a new president for the South Korea. Now, as of now, because the investigation agencies are basically investigating that whether the act of the president is an example of a rebellion or abuse of power, among other crimes that he might have committed related to the corruption. The family also has been accused of corruption and taking the bribes and all that. So because of the investigation that is undergoing, he has been banned from leaving the country till the investigation is complete. Now suppose that if he is convicted, now what will be the result of the conviction? The constitutional court has a full power that even the president of South Korea can face a very extreme form of punishment such as death penalty or life imprisonment. And this is something which is very interesting, because the president, if you consider, he is the highest office holder of the country, he is the first president, first we can say the person of the country. And even in South Korea, for him the law is equal as any other citizen may be. So this is also very interesting and something that we should learn about. Now presidential privilege, many people can think that since he is the president, he must have pardoning power as we have in India or we have in the United States also. For example, if we compare the case of US, where the president, outgoing president Joe Biden, has already used his power to pardon his son Hunter Biden, who has been involved or who has been accused of involving in many such cases where he might be tried. So the presidential privilege of immunity that we talk about from criminal prosecution, that South Korean president also enjoys. However, the allegations of rebellion or treason, if such kind of charges are proved that the president has been involved in such kind of cases, such kind of incitement, then obviously this privilege of immunity will not apply. He will be treated as a normal citizen of the country, and that is why he can face the extreme form of punishment. Now, subsequently, Yoon, who is the president of South Korea, could also be investigated, detained, arrested, or indicted over his martial law decree as per the report. So, these are what we can expect to happen in the Korea. Now, due to this development, South Korea has been engulfed in what we can call as the political crisis, and we are seeing two group of people, crowd, we can say mass gathering, has been observed in the Seoul, that is the capital city of South Korea, where the people who is in what we can call as the support of the impeachment, they also have come in large number and they are celebrating it, and they are demanding the constitutional court to go ahead with the impeachment as the motion is passed by the National Assembly. However, a small crowd is also been observed who are the supporter of the president and believe that something wrong is being done to him. So this kind of domestic crisis has come into picture as far as the South Korea is concerned. Now, about all these affairs, what is the standpoint of the president? If we try to understand, even after the passage of the motion of impeachment against him, he has stood firm on his decision of declaring martial law. He believed that what he did was an act of simple governance. It is nothing to do with a rebellion against the established order of the government or established constitution. And this is something that he has stood firm with. Also, he said that the people who are opposed to the martial law decree, or who is acting or who are acting against him previously or even now, are nothing but a kind of monster, and he has compared them with the anti-state forces. Actually, during the martial law, he has clearly stated that the people who are not allowing him to pass his budget, for example, or any kind of motion bill, they are colluding with the North Korea and they are threat to the South Korean security. And this was one of the ground or the way how he has defended his action earlier. And if you look at his statement that he has given, you can see that I will fight to the end to prevent the forces and criminal groups from threatening the future of the Republic of Korea. So basically, he's trying to weave what you can call as a nationalist versus anti-nationalist fight, where he is portraying himself that the decision he took was in the nationalist state. It was in the interest of the security of the country, while the opposition party members who have ganged up against him, they are anti-national forces. Now, in last, if you try to understand that though this situation basically pertains to the domestic politics of South Korea, will it have any impact on India? Now, many experts argue that in the short term, we cannot see or will not see any significant impact on the country or India specifically, but in long term, several impact we can observe. For example, if we talk about the tourism, we know that both India and South Korea have very unique, distinct culture, and due to this cultural diversity, both countries attract a huge number of tourists from each other. So, if we talk about the tourism to South Korea, almost 53,000 Indians have visited last year in South Korea. Now, obviously, since the news is coming where it seems that the internal situation is not peaceful, disturbed, there can be mass gathering, there can be crowd difficulty in crowd control, riot kind of situation may break out. So, this might basically what can say encouraged tourists to cancel their plan for South Korea. And this report already has been coming from the many travel agencies, where they have reported that many Indian travelers or tourists have cancelled their near-term South Korea plan because of this disturbance. So, tourism sector obviously is going to have a significant impact. Vice versa, if you talk about from the South Korea also, as long as the internal disturbance or the internal political problems persist, many South Korean tourists also will avoid to travel outside, including India. So both countries will face difficulty in that. Second, if we talk about the trade ties between India and South Korea, so as per the recent data, today we have a trade volume standing somewhere between $13 billion. In this, we can see in last 3-4 years how the trade balance has changed. As far as India and South Korea's trade relations are concerned, we can see that we run a current account deficit or trade deficit, not current account deficit, trade deficit in South Korea, where we export less and import more. The export value of South Korean merchandise to India is $10.62 billion, while the export value of Indian goods and services being exported to South Korea stand at only $2.87 billion. So this is a trade balance. Now, obviously, in short term, we might not see any significant changes in this, but in long term, if such kind of problem persists or the political crisis does not resolve, this will impact the government decision making. This will impact the government's trade and economic policy, and it may also create a sense of uncertainty among the business partners, or what you can call as the business groups. And this can in long term impact the overall trade relation between the countries by decreasing or lowering the volume and value of the goods and services being transacted. Third impact we can obviously see, we know that India has diaspora that is present all across the world, and South Korea is no exception. As per the report published by the Ministry of External Affairs and the Embassy of South India in South Korea, total about 15,000 people of Indian origin or Indian citizens, we can say, are living in the South Korea. So obviously, if internal law and order situation get disturbed, this will have also an impact on the life of Indian citizens or in persons of Indian origin who are residing there. So that is how we can overall understand the impact of this crisis in India, largely observed or maybe felt in the three spheres. Now, in last, we can try to discuss a mains based question that can be asked, because we know in GS2 you have international relations, where we have to understand the bilateral relations between the India and the important trading partners or economic partners. So the question can be asked like this: is there any lesson India can learn from South Korean political crisis? And if we try to understand, we also have an analogy, we also have a similar kind of experience during the time of Indira Gandhi when emergency was declared. So that time emergency was declared and remained in force for a long period of time, due to which later on when election was held, Indira Gandhi lost her election. So related to that also, we can think of in future that how we can avoid such kind of situation basically in the Indian political system. And second, discuss the possible multidimensional effect of same on the India's interest. Again, it is a very evolving situation. A lot of changes are going to happen. It is still even not clear whether the president will have to leave his office or he will be reinstated with the Constitutional Court. So unless and until that verdict is clear, we have to be hopeful that India and South Korea relation will not be tensed or stressed because of the domestic development in South Korean politics. That is all about this particular video. I hope you got a gist of the topic of discussion. Thank you very much.